was 12 years old when both of his parents died. Within months, the family business was sold off, and the boy was shipped away to a boarding school, alone, grieving, with no fortune and no family to return to. By every reasonable expectation, this was a child the world had forgotten. And yet, that same orphan boy would grow up to build the single most recognizable luxury brand on the planet, a name that today sits on the wrists of presidents, explorers, and kings, worth an estimated $100 billion. His name was Hans Wilsdorf, and the watch he created was called Rolex. This is the story of how a forgotten orphan conquered time itself. Hans Wilsdorf was born in 1881 in Bavaria, Germany, into a comfortable middle-class family that ran a successful iron business. But comfort vanished early. His mother died when he was a boy, and when his father followed soon after, Hans became an orphan at just 12 years old. His fate fell into the hands of his uncles, who made a decision that must have felt like a betrayal at the time. They sold the prosperous family business and used part of the money to send Hans and his siblings to boarding school. The young Hans hated it. He felt abandoned. But buried inside that painful decision was a gift that would shape everything. Because at that boarding school, stripped of family and forced to rely entirely on himself, Hans became fiercely independent, and he became a brilliant student. He excelled in mathematics, and crucially, he mastered languages, becoming fluent in English. Remember that detail, because that single skill, a German orphan who could speak perfect English, would later unlock the entire world for him. The hardship didn't break him. It forged him into exactly the kind of person who could build a global empire, self-reliant, disciplined, and able to move between cultures and countries as if borders didn't exist. As a young man, Hans drifted into the world of watches, taking a job at a Swiss watchmaking firm where he worked in quality control, checking, testing, obsessing over precision. It wasn't glamorous. He was a clerk, but he was absorbing something invaluable, an almost religious belief that a timepiece's worth lived in its accuracy. Then, in 1903, that English fluency paid off. He moved to London, the beating heart of the world's largest empire, and 2 years later, in 1905, at just 24 years old, he took the leap. With financial backing from his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, he founded his own company, Wilsdorf and Davis. The orphan was now a businessman. But here's where Wilsdorf revealed the trait that separates the merely successful from the legendary. He saw the future before anyone else did. In the early 1900s, serious men carried pocket watches. The wristwatch was considered a flimsy feminine novelty, a piece of jewelry for ladies, not a real instrument for real men. Everyone in the industry agreed on this. Everyone except Hans. He looked at this dismissed little object and made a bold, almost reckless prediction. He wrote that pocket watches would soon disappear entirely, and that wristwatches would replace them completely. He staked his entire company on an idea the whole industry was laughing at. There were two enormous problems standing in his way. First, wristwatches at the time were wildly inaccurate. Second, even the accurate ones were vulnerable. Dust and moisture would seep inside and destroy the delicate movement. To solve the accuracy problem, Hans tracked down a small Swiss workshop in Bienne that specialized in making tiny, precise movements before anyone else thought there was a market for them. He placed huge orders. And then he did something to silence the doubters forever. In 1910, his wristwatch became the first ever to receive an official Swiss certificate of chronometric precision. Soon after, one earned the prestigious Class A certificate from the Kew Observatory in England, an honor previously reserved for marine chronometers. He had scientific proof that a wristwatch could be just as accurate as any pocket watch. The world was forced to take notice. Along the way, he needed a name. Something short, memorable, easy to pronounce in any language, and small enough to print neatly on a watch dial. After testing over 100 possibilities, he landed on a word that meant absolutely nothing in any language, which was precisely the point: Rolex. In 1915, he renamed the entire company after it, but Wilsdorf's masterpiece, the innovation that built the legend, came in 1926. He finally cracked the second great problem: water and dust. He developed a watch case with a screw-down crown and a hermetically sealed design that locked out moisture completely. It was the world's first truly waterproof wristwatch. He named it, fittingly, the Oyster, because, the story goes, it sealed as tightly as an oyster shell. He had built something genuinely revolutionary, but a revolutionary product is worthless if no one believes in it. And this is where the orphan revealed his final, greatest talent. He was perhaps the most brilliant marketer the world had ever seen. In 1927, a young typist named Mercedes Gleitzer set out to swim the freezing English Channel. Wilsdorf seized the moment. He strapped a Rolex oyster around her neck and sent her into the water. For over 10 hours, she swam through the brutal cold. And when she finally emerged, exhausted, the Rolex on her body was still keeping perfect time. Wilsdorf didn't just whisper about it. He bought the entire front page of the Daily Mail newspaper to announce the triumph to the world. In a single stroke, he had invented the modern celebrity endorsement and proven his impossible claim in the most dramatic way imaginable. He put oysters in fish tanks in shop windows so customers could watch them tick underwater. The man understood, decades ahead of his time, that you don't just sell a product, you sell a story of triumph. The innovations never stopped. In 1931, Rolex introduced the self-winding perpetual rotor, the mechanism that automatically winds the watch from the motion of your wrist, technology that nearly every automatic watch on Earth still relies on today. Rolex would go on to climb Everest with Hillary and Tenzing and descend to the deepest point in the ocean. And there's one final detail that reveals who Hans Wilsdorf truly was, beneath the empire. After his beloved wife died, the orphan who'd been abandoned as a child created the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation and gave it 100% of his Rolex shares. To this day, no individual owns Rolex. The company is owned by a charitable foundation, and much of its enormous profit quietly flows to good causes, including, fittingly, the care of orphaned and disadvantaged children. The boy who lost everything made sure other children wouldn't have to. So, what's the lesson stitched into every Rolex? Hans Wilsdorf had every excuse to fail. Orphaned, abandoned, robbed of his family and fortune before he was a teenager. But he turned his greatest wound, that forced independence, into his greatest weapon. He saw a future no one else believed in, proved it with relentless precision, and sold it with unmatched genius. The next time you see that little crown on a watch dial, remember, it was created by a 12-year-old orphan who had nothing and who decided he would master time itself. If you love these untold stories of how broken beginnings forged extraordinary empires, subscribe, because uncovering the real human story behind the world's most legendary brands is exactly what this channel does. And tell me in the comments, do you think Wilsdorf's genius was the engineering or the marketing that convinced the world to care? And whose incredible origin story should I tell next? Drop it below.